The queer theory is a theory based that ideas aren't identity set and doesn't determine who we are. It suggests that it's pointless talking about women or any other group as there's so many different elements that in order to assume people can be seen as collectively is wrong, as we shouldn't generalise. The theory focuses on sex, gender and desire, as it explores lesbians, bisexuals and transgenders, as well as cross-dressing, intersexuality and gender ambiguity. The theory is Judith Butler's belief, founded in 1990, and is that gender is not a result of nature, but is socially constructed into our lives. It is reinforced by male and female behaviour from different cultures. An example of this is when a baby boy is born, and it would be dressed in blue, as girls would be dressed in pink, as those are the colours supposedly which represent these genders. It is a theory which asks us to consider how the media constructs gay representation. For example, in some movies, a character who's gay may be portrayed as being a subordinate male, having a feminine side who's in touch with his emotions and takes pride in his appearance. However, this wouldn't be an accurate description as you can't generalise it. Heteronormativity is heterosexuality in the norm, in culture, in society and in politics. It doesn't mean that everyone is straight, however, we assume that they are as this is what's portrayed the most in the media. Most representations of sexualities that are different to straight are from a heterosexual's point of view. One example of a queer theory in the media is from the popular TV show Skins. The characters Emily and Naomi are both lesbians, however, they're not always portrayed as your stereotypical lesbians the media often portrays. Since although Naomi can be seen very tomboyish, both her and Emily dress girly and wear skirts on occasions. This challenges the dyke stereotype. Also, their relationship is shown no different to how a straight relationship would be portrayed. Although they have their differences at times, it's an overall positive relationship. There is also another character, Maxie, whose sexuality is originally not accepted by his friend due to his religion, but is then accepted. This is a positive example supporting the queer theory from the media. Another example which explores the theory is in Jennifer's Body, as the audience assumes the character is straight since she's been seen with boys, but is then kissing her best friend on the bed. This kissing scene is portrayed as an intimate moment, and the female gaze is used on their bodies, which deems the moment as desirable. It could be argued that this scene from the film was made from a heterosexual male's point of view. The British Broadcasting Corporation, more commonly known as the BBC, is the world's leading public service broadcaster. Although it's not exactly owned to anyone, it operates under a royal charter, and the corporation is overseen by the BBC Trust. This means they're funded by the money made from the UK households paying their licence fees. It was founded on the 18th of October 1922 by the British General Post Office, and the purpose was to broadcast experimental radio services. As newspapers were popular in the 1920s, Fleet Street persuaded the government to ban all news programmes until 7 to avoid competition with newspapers, but the BBC were only allowed to use news from wired services instead of reporting its own. It was also decided in 1923 that the BBC would not advertise in order to make their profits, but would ask for a 10-shilling licence fee to fund their broadcasts. This is something that carries on to the present day as it's very unique to the company. Fast forwarding to some years later, television broadcasting was suspended due to the Second World War on the 1st of September 1939 to the 7th of June 1946. During the Second World War, the public was far more interested in the radio and the affairs of the war. Then in 1955, competition was introduced to the BBC, which was ITV. As the competition rose, so did many comparisons from the public. However, the BBC was praised for its quality and range of its broadcasting, as ITV was heavily laid down on for not providing enough quality programming. It was then in 1962 that the BBC were given the opportunity to have another channel, which they named BBC Two, which would then use a higher resolution than the standard channels used across Europe. 5 years later, their radio and national channels are now established as a result of them reorganising and renaming their channels. Skipping to the next decade, the organisation started selling a few channels to private owners. For example, BBC Broadcast was sold to the Macquarie Capital Alliance Group. At this moment in time, the BBC's success was big, due to them yet again reorganising and adding new channels to create a larger brand. Also, in 2006, the first trial for BBC HD began, testing their new technology and the technical practicality of broadcasting in HD. This carries on to the very present day and proves to be very successful in engaging different audiences. However, troubles hit out for the BBC in 2010 when controversial plans of making major cuts to reduce the size of the organisation came to the surface. Mark Thompson claimed the corporation was getting very close to the edge. The 6-year strategy plan was to cut 2,500 jobs and the size of BBC Television Centre. This put the BBC into the limelight, which was fiercely opposed by unions who threatened with strikes. It was then in October 2011 that further cuts were announced, so the full budget reduction of 20% was reached. 2,000 staff were cut as another 1,000 was sent to Media City UK. Many departments have been split and sold off to private companies as a result of this. The BBC is still going on today and will be going for a long time due to its success and good ownership. Due to so many people having access to internet, as well as having 10 national television channels, 10 national radio stations, they also have BBC Red Button Interactive TV, BBC Online and BBC World Service.